May as well run down the stats like in 30 seconds or less for
Sure,
those
go
four.
for it.
Slots. Yeah, slot 7 is drone speed. Slot 8 is drone optimal. Slot 9 is repair drone amount per cycle. And slot 10 is drone hit points. All three shield, armor, and hull. All of these slots come in 1%, 3%, and 5% variations.
So, and these have you very, very, very excited, don't they?
Yeah. I actually haven't. I don't think that you and I specifically, Ash, have talked about the work that I did with the Hydra implants on the Gila that can now do dark sights.
Go on.
Well, if you're gonna pull my leg, if you're gonna drag it out of me, yeah. I did some. I had a good time designing this. So as everyone knows or should know or has learned the hard way, don't bring drones to a missile party, which is Dark Abyss sites. Dark Abyss sites give everything a higher maximum speed, you and the enemies, penalize everything's turrets, you and the enemies, and your drones. So the fact that everything is moving faster, in addition to the fact that optimal and fall off on everyone's turrets is severely impacted, down to 30% in a tier 5 site. Because of this, drones and turrets are largely ineffective in dark sites, and you're really guided towards using missiles. A player could, in theory, bring a turret ship and survive, although it would be extremely difficult and be for challenge purposes only, as opposed to being an effective way to run this site. The drones have no such ability to do so. A player can say, I see what has happened to my optimal range and to my fall off, and I see the speed that the enemies are moving at and how they're piloting, and can compensate and make their turrets able to hit. A drone does no such thing. The drone knows I am supposed to. This was where the math got fun. I had to suss out the drone AI and prove out, exactly what it is, because this is not something that's published anywhere. CCP doesn't tell you exactly what the drone does. You kind of have to figure it out. And then even if you find it somewhere that it says it does a certain thing, you really have to test it. So this did take some testing to actually verify. And what I came up with was the actual drone behavior. And the actual drone behavior is that they have a preferred orbit distance and a maximum orbit distance at which they will begin chasing. They will always attempt to reach their preferred orbit distance until they're at the maximum. When they reach the maximum, they will increase their speed from their orbit speed to their maximum speed and stop shooting and begin to chase.
Right.
The orbit speed and the maximum speed are both listed.
To put this in less numbery terms, basically, a drone can either have its micro warp drive on or be shooting, but not both. So it'll micro warp drive to the opponent, and then you'll actually watch light drones do this. They'll whip over and they'll whip around, and then they'll stop and they'll get into this nice slower orbit. And that slower speed is their not micro warp drive speed, and that's when they can shoot.
So what Ash is describing as micro warp drive is how the drones were coded to behave as if they had micro warp drives. So they don't actually have that module. They don't use capacitor. It doesn't change their signature radius. And most importantly, in a dark site, since the specific text, you can actually show it on screen, Ash, most likely, if you bring up the dark key and the dark weather and everything, it impacts your maximum velocity. So for a player ship, with your prop off in a dark site, your maximum velocity is increased. With your prop on in a dark site, your maximum velocity is increased. But because drones don't have a prop, they just have a maximum speed that they sometimes choose not to use. It's like it's like you clicking on the bottom of your HUD and setting your speed below the maximum. That's what drones do. I'm supposed, my max speed is 3,000 meters per second, and my orbit speed is 500 meters per second. That means set speed 500. So since only the maximum velocity is impacted, the orbit velocity is not the thing moving it as fast as it can without a micro warp drive. It's actually just choosing to go slower. So in a dark site, drones do not orbit faster, and this is a critical point as far as trusting the fact that this will work, because if they orbited faster, they would track worse. So Now we have a drone that says, I'm going to try to be this far, and I'm only going to shoot as long as I'm within this a little bit further, and this is how fast I'm moving when I'm orbiting. Now I lost a whole bunch of optimal and a whole bunch of fall off on this drone. The chosen orbit range is now outside its optimal range. It's on purpose orbiting too far for it to actually hit well. It's outside of range, and you can't tell it to change the range where it orbits. So, and that is why the Hydra implants are the solution to this. They increase the drone optimal and fall off, as well as tracking. So now this allows me to extend the drone's range back outside, further out than its orbit range. So if it's orbiting at 1600 meters and my optimal is further than 1600 meters, I can actually hit things now. So we throw in a whole bunch of Hydra implants, and we throw in the Valdimar implant that gives us the optimal range in slot 8, and we throw in one drone scope chip rig, which is a rig that also increases the drone optimal range. And between all of these things, we have now restored our drone's abilities to hit. We still don't have as much optimal and fall off as before, but we never really needed it because the drone was always in range anyway. So we've now restored its ability to hit based on range, and we've accounted for its dumb AI and us not being able to control that. So we're not automatically broken from the moment we enter, but we still have a problem. Everything moves 50% faster. Everything got this bonus, including, your ship has it, which is great, but not really very helpful to you in a drone boat. And the enemies have it, which is really bad because now the drones don't track quite as well and may not even outrun them and may have to stop shooting. So, to account for that, we lose one invul and we put on a web. The web will reduce the speed of the enemies back to quote unquote normal speed as you would see in other sites. And now we've accounted for the turret penalty as well as the speed penalty, and our drones are hitting. But what do we do about our tank? Because we just dropped an invul. We dropped the rig that had resist in there. These things were important. We dropped all of our crystal implants. Those things were keeping us alive. And the answer is that because all of the enemies are so heavily penalized, and they do the same dumb thing that the drone does, they follow their AI that tells them to hit at their normal unpenalized ranges, except that they're penalized now. So pretty much nothing hits you in these sites, in addition to the fact that you're moving faster. So we reduced our tank, we restored our ability for our turrets to hit based on range, and then we slowed everything down to get everything back in line with our previous tracking. And if we finally look at the last thing that the Hydra does to the drones, is it gives them additional tracking. Because there's one last thing that the dark side has done to our damage, and that's not provide us with a weather resist hole. We don't have it. All the other weathers do. Normally we choose the drones for the weather, we shoot into the resist hole, everything evaporates. In a dark site, there's no such benefit. So, because the Hydras give us tracking, and drones that do more damage and less tracking wouldn't normally be a worse choice, we are able to use infiltrators. We are even able to use augmented infiltrators. And when we use augmented infiltrators, they track faster than the Minmatar drones would, which are normally the fastest. And all of a sudden, we've increased our damage to at least partially account for the fact there's no resist hole. And now we actually belong in a dark site in a Gila.
Hope you all followed that. I'm probably gonna go back and listen to it again.
Mm-hmm.
No, but
That was a fun process figuring that out.
yeah, and all of that for some throwaway implants for an event. Sounds good.